In this section, we're going to start by building and creating our application. We're going to spend a lot of time in this section actually building the user interface for this. It's going to take us through a tour of Xcode, looking at things such as Interface Builder, and writing the code that's necessary to hook up our storyboard to our actual code. So first, what we did was we clicked File, New, and we created a new project. Once in here, we're going to click Single View Application. We're going to call this Micro Poster. We're going to hit Next. And for now, I'm just going to put it in my desktop. So let's just create an entirely new project. Now, once we've gotten here, let's just take a quick look around. We're going to go to our main storyboard, and we're going to see that there's just this view control on its own. Now, what we want to be able to build is we want to be able to have a view controller that is able to show us a list of posts. So the post may have something like the content of the post, the date of the post, the person who posted the post. We're going to grab something called a table view. So notice that I'm just searching for table view, and I'm going to drag it across to my view controller. I'm just going to stretch it so it fits the entire thing. Now that I have my table view, I'm going to, on the right-hand side, I'm going to add a prototype cell. Now what I want you to look at here is I'm just changing this so you can kind of get the idea. Imagine our application may have this title, so the content, and below the author. And if you think about it, there's this repeating idea. And so a table view is composed of many cells. So we have this really, really base table view. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to make our own custom table view. So we're going to stretch this a little bit. We're going to grab our label. We're going to put a label at the very top. We're going to put another label right below it. And we're going to get a third label. So think about how we could do this. We could add the author to the very top who wrote the post. And we can write the content below. And we can just stretch this out a little bit, give it a little space. And then we can maybe write something like today, right? And so you should see on the storyboard already that we're starting to kind of get a sense for like what our design is going to look like. Now, ideally, a designer would have given you some design and you would be based on their design. But the cool thing is Storyboard actually gives you a really easy way to just test out what you want to create. So we have this view controller set up. Couple small details of what we need to do. If we click on the table view and we go to the size inspector, right, we're going to want to be setting the row height. And so we want this informed by the cell's height. And you're going to see that we're actually going to be making some small changes to this as we go along. For example, our row height is right now 65. Our table view expects the row height to be 44. Let's give that some parity. So that's the same. And now what we want to do, we have a couple more things to clean up. Our cell is going to get what's called a reuse identifier. Hold on, we're going to come back to this. You don't think that this is like something we're going to do once. You're going to actually see this again and you're going to see how it's connected. So we're going to give it a reuse identifier. And then finally, we actually need to connect it to our code. So notice that there's a view controller here. I'm going to delete it. I want us to see how to create our own view controller. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a new Cocoa Touch class. And I'm going to create our micropost view controller. So once I've created my micropost view controller, I'm going to go back to my storyboard and I'm going to click on the view controller. So I can click anywhere here or here. And what I want to do now is change the class in the identity inspector. So notice this class doesn't exist anymore. So let's type micropost view controller. What we're doing here is connecting our file to this actual view controller on our storyboard. Now, our next step, as we kind of think about what we have going on right here, is we have this custom cell. So why don't we make a custom cell? So let's create a new file. Let's go and let's create a micro post. Now it's not going to be a view control, it's a micro post cell. It's going to be coming from our UI table view cell. I'm going to just give it the name of micro post cell. The table view cell, I think, is a little understood. So let's create it. And now we can go ahead once again and just connect our cell. So notice I clicked on my cell and I'm going to give it a micro post cell. Excellent. Let's start to connect some things together. So let's click on our micro post view controller and notice this table view in here. Remember, we dragged that across. I'm going to click on the assistant editor, and what that should do is it should open the class related to this view control. Now what I want to do is click on our table view, and you can do it from here or from here. So control, hold control and click, and I want to drag it across. And what I'm going to be building is a table view. So we're starting off with just a very base table view. So now that we have our table view added in, what are we going to do next? Well, we need to also go ahead and add in our cell. So let's once again use the assistant editor. Let's switch this to our cell. And what we're going to do here is we're going to control drag from each of these labels. So let's drag across. It's our author label. And we're going to continue to do the same with each one. So let's grab our content label. And finally, this is going to be our last one, our date label. Now let's look at what we're seeing here. We have this connection called an outlet. It has a type, a UI label. That's the type of UI element it is. And what I want you to notice is this name. It's an IB outlet. Well, where does that come from? What should I think about there? This stands for Interface Builder. Your storyboard, this entire program you're looking at within Xcode, used to be called Interface Builder. Eventually, Apple merged the two together to be one program. So what this is saying is that it's giving you a connection to something that exists in your Interface Builder or your storyboard. So it's really simple. It's really a throwback to some older parts of Xcode and iOS. Once you hear about it the first time, it tends to be easy to remember. Now we want to actually configure our table view. So I'm going to remove some of this code. We don't need it right now. And what we're going to do here is a couple of things. First, to be able to use our table view, we need to provide it with some information. If you try to imagine what we're going to do here, a couple of things need to happen. Firstly, I need to tell it how many things to populate itself with, and I also need to tell it how each cell should look. So I'm going to add a protocol UI table view data source. I'm also going to add another one, table view delegate. Now let's click inside these, and I'm hitting command click and just looking in. And notice that it's a protocol that allows us to define the number of rows in a section, the cell for row at, so describing the cell. We can even define the number of sections. The default is 1. Notice that a lot of these methods come with defaults. So now if we go back here, we should notice that we're getting an error. And the reason for this is that our controller does not conform to the protocol. So here we are adopting these protocols, but we are not conforming. So let's go and do that. So we're going to get number of rows in section. And for now, let's return 10. And for this last one, let's grab the cell for row at. And all we're going to do is we just need to return a cell. Now, let's think about this for a couple of seconds. We don't want to return just an ordinarily cell. We want to return a micro post cell, which happens to be a UI table view cell. So one thing we have to consider here is that we want to return a cell that is able to set these labels. So what we're going to do now, basically give ourselves a collection to use to populate our cells. So what I'm going to do is create an array called post. I'm going to make it an array of dictionaries, and I'm going to make those dictionaries have some information. So I'm going to put author, and it's going to be myself, and I'm going to put content, and it's going to be I love Swift. And then I can do another dictionary, and we can do something very similar. And so basically all we're doing here, it's a little contrived, but we're just giving ourselves some information to play with. So we have a bit of information. Now, if you think about the number of rows in section, we can return our posts.count. And so we can define that there should only be 2 posts. Now for our table view cell, and this is where things get interesting, we need to be able to dequeue the right cell. So as we are scrolling through that table view, we want to always get the right cell. And so there's an idea, dequeuing the reusable cell. It returns a reusable table view cell for the specified reuse identifier. So it looks on the table view, and it's going to get our micro post cell. Remember we said the reuse identifier earlier, and we're going to pass it the index path. And so this gives us a cell, but we don't want any ordinary cell. We kind of want it to be a micro post cell. Now, why do we care about it being a micro post cell? Well, for a couple of reasons. It will then have a text label. Well, actually, it will have a date label, an author label, content label. So we can actually go ahead and set this. Now, I need to set this to the right post content, right? You can imagine that's what's going to happen. But how do I get the right post? Well, let's think about that. We have an array. Arrays can take indices. So what if I can find out the right cell for the right post? And we can. So let's grab a post. Let's grab all posts. And we're going to use the index path, which is basically the location of the cell. And we're going to use the row. And so this should give us the individual post. And so now what we can do is we can say if let content is equal to post content. And now we can set our cell's content. So we can set this to content. And finally, we can return our cell. Let's also chain this on and add author, since we know the author. And we can say cell.authorLabel.text is equal to author. Super simple. Just fix our tabbing. So now, to review, we set the count of our posts and we set our cell. So let's run this. So we've done a lot here. We've given our storyboard a really simple design. We've attached some information. We should expect to see some information. We should expect to see our posts. Now we can see the table view if you look carefully at these lines, but I don't see any information. Why is that? Additionally, I don't see only 2 posts. So how can we fix that? Well, this is an interesting concept we're going to find where our table view needs to know who to delegate the responsibility to. What does that mean? The table view, this is an external UI element that we've attached to our view controller. We have a view controller that happens to conform to the data source. So the table view needs some data, and it happens to live in a view controller that is actively conforming to that data. So the table view is giving up responsibility to self, which in our case is our view controller. So it's directly setting what is called delegating the responsibility via its data source, self being our view controller. So let's run this. And you'll notice that we'll actually get some data. Excellent. And so what did we really learn there? We learned that we have to actually delegate this responsibility to the view controller. This is actually really awesome when you think about it. It means that the UI element gets to pretty much stay very dumb and not have to know too much information, whereas the view controller gets to make all of these decisions. So that's it for this video. We've actually packed a ton into this. One thing you should be noticing is that we're on an 8+. And there's some extra spacing on the right-hand side that we don't actually want. There's also, we may want to specify how these should be spaced from each other. How do we deal with multiple iPhone screens?